The lab smelled like lemon, like someone thought citrus could hide corpses in the data. I'd been in hospitals, protest camps, and one particularly sketchy biotech startup, but nothing screamed artificial cleanliness like this place. The air tasted filtered, the light too soft, and every step on the polished floor echoed like a secret I hadn't earned the right to keep. Remy? The receptionist looked up from her terminal. Her name tag said Ruhi. Her tone said, "Don't make me regret this." "New hire?" "Lab assistant, level 3, I replied, handing over my badge. Apparently qualified to touch expensive things but not to question them. Her lips twitched. "Cute. Keep that humor. It'll help when the silence starts talking back." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "And one more thing. Try not to die." I blinked. "That's oddly specific advice. Protocol," she said sweetly, and the badge scanner beeped between us. "Welcome to the Aurelian Project." Behind her, a pastel sign glowed, "Do not initiate contact with Dr. D.K. Hale." The letters pulsed once, like a warning heartbeat. Perfect. My boss was allergic to people. The elevator carried me up through steel and silence. In the mirrored walls, my reflection looked too composed for someone lying through his teeth. Under the white coat, my heart was sprinting. I was here to stop a drug that could chemically erase instinct. To save society from itself, according to our movement's manifesto. It sounded noble in encrypted chat rooms. Up close, it felt like standing inside the enemy's lungs. The doors opened with a sterile sigh. The corridor of Lab 7C stretched ahead. Glass walls, invisible, cameras, an air conditioner that sounded like a sermon on control. My footsteps whispered over the floor as I passed one door after another, labeled containment, analysis, purity, and finally, Dr. Hale. He was already there. If perfection could frown, it would look like him. Dr. Daniel Hale didn't bother to turn when I entered. He stood in front of a terminal, sleeves rolled to his elbows, posture too precise to be accidental. His dark hair had that I ran a hand through at once, and science did the rest kind of chaos. But everything else, his movements, his tone, even his breathing, screamed discipline. "Remy," he said without looking, "you're late." "It's my first day," I said. I was busy not dying in reception. His head tilted slightly, like the words were data to be sorted. "You'll find Centrifuge 3 in need of recalibration. The last assistant misunderstood basic physics. Did they die too?" He ignored me. "Follow protocol. No improvisation." Right. Perfect fit. By noon, my hands smelled like latex and lemon, and I'd memorized the difference between 32 shades of sterile gray. The lab was a symphony of hums and blinking lights, every beep calibrated to say, "We are gods with clipboards." I'd have admired it if I wasn't here to tear it apart. At lunch, while others drifted toward the cafeteria, I stayed behind. The servers were password locked, but I'd been briefed for that. Activist techs had built me a tool disguised as a calibration patch. It copied active datasets under the pretext of error correction. Cute. The terminal blinked. Internal logs unfolded, crisp and clinical. A&E, case 044I. Adverse event flagged. Status, terminated. Outcome, unfavorable. Unfavorable, I murmured. That's one way to say dead. The data stream pulsed on. Respiratory insult, cardiac instability, suppressed reactivity. The numbers dropped, like a heartbeat running out of courage. I swallowed hard. The public summary had said no fatalities. Either someone was bad at math, or very good at lying. I slid a drive into the port, copying everything. My pulse spiked with the progress bar. 92%. 95. 98. The door hissed open. "Working late?" Dr. Hale's voice could have frozen fire. He stepped inside, crisp white lab coat, eyes the color of logic gone wrong. I minimized the window too slowly. He stopped beside my workstation, gaze flicking over the open files. His eyes were pale gray. Not silver, not blue, just gray, like a weather system trying to decide whether to rain or judge you. You were reviewing flagged events, he said evenly. I was filtering. He repeated the word like it was evidence. For what? I shrugged. For truth, mostly. It seems in short supply. He looked up, and for the first time his control wavered. Just a fraction, a hairline crack in composure. I caught it. His nostrils flared. His shoulders stiffened. And then, something else. Not anger. Not quite. The air shifted. Heavy. Electric. Every instinct I'd trained to suppress, the ones this drug claimed to silence, stirred awake. No. 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 Dr. Hale blinked sharply, as if clearing static. You're pale, he said. Go home. I'm fine. You're shaking. Just caffeine. Or conscience. That too. He exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. Go. Before I... He stopped himself, and the silence that followed felt like a wire pulled too tight. Before you what? I wanted to ask. Before you fire me? Before you... He turned away. Security, he said into his wrist comm. Escort Mr. Remy to the exit. My heart slammed. That's not necessary. It is, but when the guards arrived, he hesitated. His hand hovered mid-air, fingers flexing like he wanted to reach out, then curled into a fist. His scent, clean, restrained, like rain bottled for clinical use, hit me sharp. I froze. He looked straight at me. For the first time, not through me. Then, calmly, return him to my office. My blood went cold. My office. Not detention. Not HR. Him. I caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass wall as they led me out. Controlled, immaculate, and breathing a little too fast. Whatever had just happened wasn't in the manuals. And judging by the lemon still clinging to the air, neither of us was going to wash it off. They didn't drag me, exactly. More like escorted me with a politeness sharp enough to bleed on. The guards dropped me at a door that looked like it could eject you into space if you sneezed wrong. Inside, one of them said, Dr. Hale's office wasn't a room. It was an autopsy of comfort. Walls of glass, shelves of books that looked alphabetized by judgment. And a single plant that was either artificial or deeply depressed. A faint scent of bergamot lingered in the air, so clean it hurt. He stood by a low table, pouring tea with surgical precision. Steam curled between us like a truce flag that neither of us believed in. Sit, he said. I sat. He pressed a discreet button under the desk. The camera light in the corner blinked once and went dark. Perfect. No witnesses. Why were you accessing flagged data? He asked. No anger. Just scalpel curiosity. I was filtering anomalies, I said. Too fast. Anomalies? He poured tea into a porcelain cup, not looking at me. What kind? The fatal kind, I said. That made him look up. His eyes were the same soft gray as before, only now the softness was gone. Those reports are classified. Yeah. Funny how death keeps ending up behind paywalls. His jaw tightened. You think you know what we're doing here? I think you're trying to fix something that isn't broken. He moved around the desk, slow and deliberate, like gravity worked differently for him. Instincts destroy lives. The world needs control. Or consent, I countered. For a second, silence filled the space, thick as fog. The hum of air filters. The quiet protest of porcelain cooling. Then he said, almost softly, You talk like someone who's been hurt. I forced a smile. You talk like someone who caused it. That should have ended the conversation. Instead, he set down his cup and leaned against the desk, close enough that I could see the twitch of a pulse at his throat, the edge of exhaustion under his immaculate exterior. "Remy," he said quietly. "You're shaking. Maybe I'm just cold. Or lying." He took a step closer. Too close. My body reacted before my brain could stop it. A flash of heat, a pulse in my chest that didn't belong to fear. His eyes flicked to mine. The air between us snapped tight. Something in him faltered. His hand lifted halfway, as if instinctively reaching toward me, and then froze mid-air, trembling. His breath hitched. He stepped back like I'd burned him. I wasn't sure who looked more horrified. "What was that?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Nothing. That didn't look like nothing." I said nothing. His tone cracked on the second syllable. He turned away, staring out at the city beyond the glass wall, one hand, gripping the railing like it was the only solid thing in the room. His shoulders rose and fell, controlled but uneven. For the first time, Dr. Daniel Hale, the man who built an empire on suppressing reaction, was visibly fighting one. "You okay?" I asked carefully. He laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. "Do I look okay? Honestly? You look like a malfunctioning AI that just discovered feelings." That earned me a glare sharp enough to sterilize the air. "I don't experience." He stopped himself, exhaled. "I eliminated that variable years ago." "Congratulations," I said. "You invented celibacy." "Get out," he said flatly. "Of your office or the building?" "Yes." I stood, but didn't move to the door. "Look, if you're having a reaction, don't say it like that," he snapped. "A biological reaction," I corrected, hands raised. "It's not my fault." His eyes closed briefly, like he was mentally calculating how much arsenic it would take to erase me. I sighed. "You need a buffer, airflow, distance." 6 gallons of ice cream. That almost made him smile. "You're infuriating." "Better than fatal," I said. He rubbed his temple, exhausted. "Go home, before I decide professionalism is overrated." Is that a threat, or an invitation? "Remy." Fine. I moved toward the door. But maybe take a nap before dismantling human instinct again. Out. In the elevator, I exhaled hard, fingers trembling. My chest still thrummed from the echo of his presence. Whatever had happened back there, it wasn't just me. I typed a quick encrypted message on my wrist pad. Fatal. Got the file. Trouble. Then deleted it before the doors opened. The lobby was empty, eerily so. I stood there for a moment, staring at the reflection in the glass wall. My own face, paler than it had any right to be. Behind me, the hallway to his office stretched like a nerve. I should have walked out. I didn't, because I could still feel it. Not just the tension, but the connection. Like static electricity stretched, between two idiots too proud to admit the storm was mutual. I turned back. He was still in his office when I knocked. "Security already took you out," he said without turning. "I got lost," I said. "On a straight hallway. Terrible sense of direction." He sighed, setting his cup down. The faint scent of bergamot drifted in the air again, somehow sharper now. "What do you want?" "To make sure you don't implode. Your concern is unnecessary." "Maybe, but I'm still here." He turned, eyes tired. "You shouldn't be." "Neither should you," I said quietly. "You built a drug to silence the body, but maybe you should ask why you wanted it silent in the first place." His gaze flickered, pain maybe, or memory. "You think I did this out of cruelty? I think you did it because feeling hurts." The silence that followed wasn't sterile this time. It was human. He looked down, voice low. "I'm assigning you to internal review. You'll work remotely from my quarters for the next 72 hours. Observation protocol." "Observation." I arched a brow. "That's adorable. You're keeping me close to monitor me?" I'm ensuring you don't destroy classified data. Sure, I said, grinning. And I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that you just had your first allergic reaction to an omega. His jaw twitched. You talk too much. I'm told it's charming. I'm told it's fatal. Well, I said, walking toward the door. Good thing you're observing me closely. He didn't reply, but as I stepped out, I caught the faintest whisper of tea and warmth in the air. Bergamot and something impossible. Something not yet named. Maybe control wasn't the only thing cracking. Daniel's apartment looked like a magazine spread that had lost an argument with gravity and won anyway. Floor-to-ceiling windows spilled the city in, bridges lit like constellations, traffic a bloodstream of red and white. The furniture was minimal, dangerously low to the ground, and allergic to clutter. On the stainless steel fridge, a single handwritten note, no touch. Charming, I said, wheeling my issued workstation into the open-plan living room. Is that a house rule? Or a threat? Boundary, Daniel said, keying my device onto the network with a string of commands so neat they felt judgmental. Kitchen's yours. If you promise not to turn it into a chemistry set. I make no promises, I said, and set my bag down in the one corner that didn't look curated by shame. We started a routine that first night. 2 workstations on opposite ends of the long table, like a demilitarized zone made of wood and power outlets. He brewed tea. I pretended instant noodles were a food group. Screens glowed, ventilation hummed, and between us stretched a wary, useful quiet. The city breathed. We tried. Your calorie intake is insufficient, he observed an hour in without looking up. That's rich, coming from a man whose dinner is steam and guilt. Tea, he said. Bergamot. Uh-huh. I live on spite and sugar, be ascetic for both of us. He almost smiled. Almost. By morning, the apartment had learned my footsteps. I padded into the kitchen to find a bowl of cut fruit in the fridge with a sticky note for glycemic stability. I ate it out of principle and, fine, gratitude. Data poured in. Internal adverse events, de-identified labs, trial notes the public would never see. I ran my filters and watched patterns surface through the fog. When I looked up, Daniel was already watching me, mug at his mouth, eyes narrowed like I was a complicated equation. Talk, he said. Protein, I said, sliding a preliminary scatterplot across the table. Pre-dose albumin and hemoglobin are predictive. The lower they are, the higher the risk of unfavorable outcomes. Meaning, it's not a moral failing or a character flaw. It's hunger. I tapped the line marching across the graph like a barbed wire fence. Low protein, micronutrient deficits, dehydration. People with less to begin with are more likely to crash. He studied the plot, the tension in his jaw easing into something uglier. Recognition. Screening's supposed to exclude malnutrition. Supposed to, I said. But guess who signed exceptions? I opened another file and highlighted a signature that repeated like a watermark. He read it, blanked. Cade. Your beta with the tragic ER history and the charming trauma jokes, I said. He's signing off on marginal cases to keep the cohort full and the clock moving. And the price is, I flicked open the 102S series. The series that wouldn't. To leave my throat, nearly catastrophic, unless a nurse breaks protocol and feeds someone. Daniel's eyes sharpened. Who fed her? Pre-op nurse. M. Cho wrote, and I quote, couldn't watch her pass out, gave protein drink. Kept her in. Probably saved her life. Also probably on a list. He leaned back, tea forgotten, gaze on the wall like the city would offer absolution. Cade will say triage. That a cleaner dataset helps more people in the long run. Cleaner datasets don't bury bodies, I said. They name them. He didn't answer, which I chose to interpret as agreement and not despair. We worked. We fell into a rhythm I didn't hate. Day bled into night and back again. We swapped drafts and graphs over, the no man's land of the table, and pretended the air was just air. The apartment changed slightly. He tolerated my printouts colonizing the table's edge. I tolerated his, labels migrating onto my food like tiny passive-aggressive flags. He refused the couch. I refused to ask why. We both avoided the fridge note like it was a shrine. On the second evening, a knock interrupted the hum. Ruhi swept in with a casserole pan the size of a moral victory. "Cookies," she announced, for quarantine and other fake words. Daniel stood like he'd been caught doing something illegal. "You can't, this is a restricted space?" Ruhi arched a brow, taking in the double workstation, the city, the distance between us calibrated to the millimeter. "Please. This is a PSA for repressed impulses. Eat sugar or I'm filing a hostile work environment complaint with me. I am HR," Daniel said faintly. "And I am the union," she replied, setting the pan down on a trivet that looked never before used. Her gaze shifted to me, softened. "You good?" "Define good," I said. "I've had 12 hours of sleep across 3 days, and a relationship with a scatterplot." "Sexy," she deadpanned. She reached into her bag and produced 2 more items, a pack of high-protein shakes and a roll of neon labels. "For pre-op conscience and post-op organization. Don't make me come back with a whiteboard." "Please don't," Daniel murmured, betrayed by a tiny, horrified smile. As she moved toward the door, she tapped the fridge note with a manicured nail. "This could say, ask first instead," she said lightly. "Better brand." A flush climbed his throat. "Noted." She paused. Softer. "Careful with each other," she said, eyes cutting between us, and then she was gone, leaving bergamot, sugar, and trouble. We opened the cookies like a bomb, slowly. I took one, exaggerated a blissful sigh just to see him roll his eyes. He did, but his mouth quirked. For 20 minutes, we ate and didn't talk about Cade. Then we did. "Tell me what you know about him that isn't in his file," I said. "Residency in a war zone masquerading as a county hospital," Daniel said. 3 lawsuits he settled, 2 he should have fought. Brilliant, brittle, evangelical about order. He believes if the room is quiet, fewer people bleed. "He's wrong," I said. "Quiet just hides the bleeding." "I know," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. We added a nutrition screen to the draft protocol. We sketched a memo to ethics that neither of us believed would change much, but both of us needed to send. Daniel wrote like his hands had met a purpose they respected. I edited like the building would burn if we misplaced a comma. At some point, my phone buzzed with a message from the network. "Status?" I stared at the word until it stopped being language. Then I typed back, "Hunger plus pressure equal to deaths. Have names." Working. Don't blow cover. Deleted the thread. Drank water. Kept going. Close to midnight, I drifted to the kitchen to rinse a mug. The city leaned against the glass, tired and bright. Footsteps padded behind me. Daniel stopped at a precise, cautious distance, set his empty cup in the sink on the far side, and reached for the dish soap like it might explode. I started. "I've got it," he said, and our hands almost aligned over the faucet handle. We froze like a staged photograph. Electricity ticked in my wrist, where the pulse lives. He exhaled, stepped back, and the air loosened a notch. "This isn't workable," he said, voice low. "The reaction, yours," I said gently, "not mine." His mouth tightened. Honesty dragged through a keyhole. "Mine, okay?" I set the mug down and dried my hands on a towel with the reverence of a hostage flag. "Then we set rules." "I already have rules," he said, flicking a glance at the fridge like it had testified. "New ones," I said. "Ones that don't treat you like a broken machine or me like a contagion." His jaw flexed. "Such as?" "We ask," I said. "We answer. We repeat. We treat bodies like they're ours, not projects. We don't touch unless both of us want it and say it. His eyes met mine, searching for traps. You think I want to touch you. I think you're terrified you do, I said. And that you'll become the thing you're afraid of if you stop controlling everything. He stared at the sink, then at the city, then at me. When he finally spoke, it sounded like ripping a stitch. It's only you. Silence bloomed, full and private. The hum of the fridge, the city's pulse, the scent of tea dampening into evening. Just me? I asked, because sometimes cruelty and care share a mouth. Just you, he said. Years. Nothing. And then you walked into my lab and the off switch failed. I breathed out, a shaky sound that might have been a laugh in better weather. Okay, I said again, softer. Then we make it survivable. He focused on my face like a blueprint. Boundaries, he said, deliberate. Time. I leaned a hip against the counter, careful of distance, careful of everything. We can work like this. We can fight the right war. He nodded once, the movement small and astonishing, like permission is a muscle he hadn't used in years. Also, I added, because humor is my life jacket. For the record, your tea is great. But if you try to use me as a grounding wire, I will sabotage your bergamot. He made a strangled sound that might have been a laugh. Noted. We drifted back to the table. The city kept breathing. We kept working. At 2 a.m, he taped our new draft to the wall like a promise and stood staring at it, hands in his pockets, shoulders curved in a way I hadn't seen before. Open, almost human. Tomorrow, he said, we schedule a review without telling the board why. We move nutrition to pre-screening and put Cade's exceptions on hold. Tomorrow, I echoed. He shut off the lights on his side of the room. Mine stayed on, a yellow island in a sea of glass. When he passed the fridge, his hand hovered over the no-touch note, then dropped. He didn't tear it down. Not yet, but in my head, a different sign had already been printed in black letters on clean white. Ask first. A rule for labs, a rule for bodies, a rule we might survive. The lab at night sounded different. Machines still breathed, monitors still blinked, but under it all ran a hum, low and anxious, like the building had insomnia. Daniel and I slipped in through separate doors, half an hour apart, pretending not to know we'd planned it. Technically, we were just reviewing trial integrity. Practically, we were conspiring. Remind me, I whispered as the retinal scanner flicked green. Why we, redoing this like spies instead of normal scientists who like sleep? Because normal scientists don't get deleted audit trails, he said. His voice came through soft, all reason and caffeine. And because if the board sees the words nutritional inequity, they'll rewrite them into user error. Catchy, I said. Maybe make it our slogan. He didn't look at me, but one corner of his mouth tilted. The Daniel version of laughter. The server room was colder than most sins. Metal racks blinked with polite menace, each light a tiny eye. I logged in, Daniel watching over my shoulder, radiating calm until he wasn't. Here, I opened the data set we'd flagged yesterday. The mortality curve spread across the screen in a perfect arc. Too perfect. They smoothed it, he murmured. No raw discontinuities. They buried them. I zoomed in, my finger tracing the flat-lined edge where the deaths should have spiked. If you normalize suffering hard enough, it looks like progress. He handed me a cup of tea, because apparently he carries bergamot into felony-grade sabotage. Drink. You shake when you're angry. Occupational hazard. And anger doesn't help. It helps me type faster. He sighed, sipping his own. The scent of bergamot filled the chill. Too human for this place. We worked in silence, rewriting algorithms, restoring deleted logs, embedding our own. Invisible tags, breadcrumbs for the ethics committee, and maybe a journalist or two. I felt him glance at me sometimes, the way you check a wound that isn't supposed to heal. At 3 a.m., Ruhi pinged us a message. All clear. Security on break. Badge rotation done. A second later, another. If you get caught, I was never born. Also, make the world quieter but don't turn off people. Daniel's eyebrow twitched. She writes like, you. She's smarter, I said. Also has better handwriting. She swapped my ID clearance with a janitorial lead last week. That's love. He looked skyward, muttered something about divine punishment, and went back to encrypting files. By dawn, we'd compiled a draft memo disguised as a safety review update, the kind that would bore investors into ignoring it, until they realized it introduced 2 new features: mandatory nutrition protocols before Aurelian administration, a shift in program design, testing consent-mediated suppression instead of total inhibition. What you're suggesting will have efficacy, Daniel said, rereading. What I'm suggesting might have death. He rubbed his temple. You know that's not how they'll measure success. Then, maybe we change the metric. His eyes flicked up, gray under the fluorescence, tired and sharp. You talk like a politician, only the broke kind. We sent it. Copy to ethics, silent CC to a journalist named Arman Blake, who owed me a favor from a past life involving a protest, and 3 strategically placed smoke bombs. If we were lucky, the memo would circulate quietly for a week before someone realized it had teeth. If not, we'd be unemployed by lunch. Later that day, someone found us. Dr. Cade arrived early for the review, his lab coat immaculate, his smile post-mortem. His voice carried that ER calm that made you trust him until you remembered how many people died on his watch. Dr. Hale, he greeted, dropping his folder on the table. And the assistant. Remy, Daniel corrected. Cade smiled with all the warmth of a scalpel. Of course. You've been busy. He opened the folder. Inside were copies of our memo, annotated in red. Nutrition adjustments? Consent language? Rebranding Aurelian into a therapy module? You're domesticating the weapon. Daniel's voice went quiet. It's not a weapon. Cade tilted his head. Everything's a weapon, when you aim it correctly. You mean when you aim it at people who can't afford to fight back? I said, before my brain consulted my survival instincts. His eyes snapped to me, dark, sharp, almost curious. Ah. The moral idealist. Exhibit A. Alive, I said. You're welcome. Cade chuckled, which somehow made it worse. I spent 10 years watching bodies stack up because instinct made them stupid. You call that natural? I call it fixable. Daniel stood then, calm eroding by degrees. You call it convenient. Order has a price, Hale. You of all people should know that. The problem, Daniel said, stepping closer, is when you start believing the price is other people's autonomy. The air tightened, humming with unsaid things. I caught the faintest trace of bergamot, his version of adrenaline, and it hit me, that he was standing between Cade and me like a wall that finally picked a side. Cade's gaze flicked between us, calculation dawning. Ah, he said softly. So, that's what this is. Enough, Daniel said. I see why you're emotional. Cade smiled, polite as poison. You found yourself an ethical anchor. Dangerous accessory for a man who hates to be touched. I clenched my jaw. Careful, I said. Your Freudian slip is showing. Gentlemen, Daniel cut in, clipped and cold. We're done. Cade gathered his files, stood, and said as he passed me, eventually, you'll learn. The world doesn't need to feel better. It needs to be quiet. I waited until he left before whispering, how much do you want to bet he edits our memo before breakfast? Daniel rubbed his face. He'll edit it, circulate his version, and make it sound like ours was a radical deviation, which means we go public before he can. I grinned. You just said go public. That's practically revolution talk. I meant ethics review, he said quickly, too quickly. Uh-huh. Sure. We stayed after hours again, in a smaller lab tucked behind the test wing. The fluorescence buzzed overhead, rhythmic as a bad heartbeat. Data spilled across our screens like confessions. He leaned over the sink to wash a beaker, sleeves rolled up, wrist tendons catching the light. It should have been nothing. It wasn't. I handed him a second mug without thinking, our fingers brushing for half a second, contact so slight it barely qualified as touch. But electricity doesn't need qualification. His eyes flicked up. My throat went dry. The hum of machines faded until there was only his breathing and mine, too fast, too close. He stepped back first, jaw tight. Remy. I know, I said. Boundaries, rules. He exhaled, hands braced on the counter. You don't make this easy. I'm not trying to. Then what are you trying to do? Stay alive, save people. Keep you from turning into Cade with better lighting. That earned me a glare, and, somehow, the smallest smile. Noted, we cleaned in silence, or something that resembled it. Before leaving, he said, if this goes wrong, if the board retaliates, you'll disappear from the system. I'll make sure of it. Wow, I said. Threat or affection? Safety measure, he said, almost smiling. I leaned against the doorway. You know, for a man who hates touch, you're weirdly protective. He looked at me then, straight on, voice low enough that I felt it more than heard it. Because the reaction isn't the problem, Remy. It's what it means. And what does it mean? That I don't want control. I want consent. I went still. No witty comeback, no sarcasm. Just that word hanging there like oxygen after drowning. I nodded, slow. Then wait for my... Yes, I said. When it's mine. He nodded back, just as slow. Always. When we left, the corridor lights flickered, and the lemon-clean air felt almost warm for once. By morning, our safety review update had gone live across the internal network. Within 2 hours, the ethics committee sent a thank you for your proactive transparency. Within 4, Cade sent an email marked urgent revision required. Within 5, Armand Blake published a quiet, devastating article titled Aurelian and the Cost of Silence. Under the byline was a single line in italics, data provided anonymously by internal sources. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. We didn't need to. The war had started, and this time, the noise was ours to make. The boardroom was designed to intimidate. Glass walls that reflected you back tidier than you felt, a table long enough to host a treaty, and projectors that warmed your face like artificial sunlight. The lemon-clean smell was stronger here, like the building had showered twice for the cameras. Daniel stood at my right, jacket buttoned, expression neutral in the way mountains are neutral. Ruhi had snagged a chair at the very back, half hidden by a column, her notebook, open, pen poised like a weapon she'd learned to make look like stationery. A line of water glasses ran down the table. I could already hear the faint tremor they'd make when the conversation hit a nerve. Celeste Pak, CEO, entered with the smile of someone who knew exactly what was true and what could be sold anyway. Thank you for coming, she said, voice warm, grip cold. Let's keep this efficient, which meant tread on eggshells wearing heels. Dr. Cade arrived next, punctual and polished. He wasn't alone. A woman I recognized from a syndicated column, Mara Quinn, professional instigator, took a seat near the end, pen ready. Across from her, quietly, Armand Blake slid into a chair and nodded at me once. His eyes said, I'm listening. Don't waste it. Celeste glanced between them and smiled like she'd planned the symmetry. Transparency review, she said. Let's begin. Cade stood and clicked to his first slide. Aurelian, outcomes post-advisory. Bar charts bloomed on the wall. Efficacy rates, compliance metrics, a curve so smooth it felt lubricated. As you can see, under my team's original parameters, suppression remained consistently high across cohorts. Under Dr. Hale's, a pause so slight it might have been polite. Recent revisions, efficacy declines. He turned the next page. A line chart dipped modestly, just enough to suggest the apocalypse. We can't sell an intervention that fails to perform. Daniel's jaw didn't move. We don't sell interventions. His voice was even, and the water glasses shivered anyway. We deploy them with consent and safety. Kay didn't look at him. There's also the matter of optics. He set down the clicker, clasped his hands. Housing an assistant under the director's roof during a sensitive phase? Remy's presence in Dr. Hale's quarters suggests a personal entanglement that compromises judgment. He said it with the mildness of a man reading weather. Mara's pen actually squeaked on the page. Armand blinked once and waited. Celeste folded her hands. Is there a cohabitation arrangement I should be aware of? Observation protocol sounded suddenly quaint. Every eye slid to me. I stood. My mouth was dry enough to fold paper cranes out of. The projector heat made my cheeks feel like I'd been toasted for serving. There was a 72-hour observation period, I said, instated by Dr. Hale after I accessed adverse event files that were, surprisingly, missing fatalities. I reached for the clicker. Cade didn't stop me. May I? Celeste raised an elegant brow. You appear to be doing so. I clicked. Cade's neat slide deck vanished, replaced by raw graphs and unglamorous numbers. The lights seemed to grow warmer. Full A&E series, I said, including 044I, the table inhaled. Official summaries list temporary dysautonomia and manageable hypotension. But the raw data tells a different story. I zoomed in. The discontinuity pulsed like a scar. We smoothed death out. Not by accident. A murmur rolled around the table. I heard the faint clink of a glass somewhere down the line. The sound of someone trying to drink patience. I moved to the next slide. Pre-dose albumin and hemoglobin levels correlate strongly with adverse outcomes. Malnutrition, dehydration, in non-sterile terms, hunger. Cade's mouth tightened. We screened. We made exceptions, I said. Signed by you, I pointed. His initials repeated down the page like a watermark in red. We've been calling this a drug problem. It's an austerity problem. Armand's pen slowed. Mara's didn't. Celeste steepled her fingers. Explain the current decline in efficacy under the revised protocol, then. When people aren't starving, they feel more, I said. And when they feel more, suppression metrics look worse. That's not failure, that's honesty. Cade's smile didn't reach his eyes. Honesty doesn't keep patients from tearing apart their lives. I turned to him. Neither does a chemical gag. He stood, suddenly weary and dangerous. I did 10 years in an ER that smelled like bleach and resignation. I've held hands that went cold while family argued over who to blame. Aurelian makes the world quieter. Quieter worlds are survivable. Daniel's hands rested flat on the table, and I would rather drown in noise than build a quiet room with no door. He stood then, too, and the air changed. He wasn't the man behind the memo or the scientist who lived on tea. He was the wall that chose where to stand. Instinct isn't the enemy. Lack of consent is. We are not in the feelings business. We are in the consent business. If Aurelian cannot exist without coercion and malnutrition, it doesn't deserve to exist. The projectors hummed harder, as if heat could decide this. Cade's voice frayed. You're sentimental. I'm specific, Daniel said. Consent, safety, nutrition, education, or we're engineering compliance and calling it medicine. The table devolved into a chorus, board members clearing throats, legal counsel, migrating phrases like exposure and mitigation, finance whispering runway. Ruhi, from the back, said just loud enough to be recorded, "We saved people and your stock options. Win-win." Celeste's smile sharpened. "Thank you, Ms. Ahuja." Noted. Mara raised a hand. "Ms. Pak, is the company prepared to delay rollout, or will you sacrifice safety for quarterly targets?" She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. Celeste let the silence play out, long enough for someone to mistake it for thought. "Here is what we will do," she said finally, and every spine in the room tensed the way bodies do before a needle. "We will pause external deployment. We will publish our revised protocol and invite external review. Aurelian will move under a new division, directed by Dr. Hale, a ripple, a cough, with an advisory council of omegas and betas." I exhaled. Careful. Too soon. "In parallel," she went on, smooth as marble, "we will develop and commercialize an adjunct for adverse responses, a counteractive compound." She smiled. "An antidote." I stared. "You already—" "We had a candidate," she said lightly. "Now we have a need." She glanced at Cade. "Dr. Cade, you will head a compliance review for the trial irregularities highlighted today." Cade blinked, as if his feet had been moved while he wasn't looking. "Compliance," he repeated, voice neutral enough to cut skin. "Your triage experience and documentation rigor will serve the company well there," she said, making cruelty sound like gratitude. "Any objections?" He swallowed. "None." Mara scribbled spin hard enough to dent the page. Armand's pen paused. He looked at me. "Are you going to say it?" And I didn't know if he meant, "Thank you," or "Don't you dare settle." Celeste tapped the table once. Nails a metronome. To summarize, safety first, transparency always, market viability preserved. She stood, and the room followed. Meeting adjourned. The projectors cooled. The lemon smell surged as the door opened, and assistants poured in to collect cups. For a moment, no one moved. Then everyone did at once. In the shifting, I felt Daniel at my shoulder, not touching exactly, but present like a promise. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. Cade gathered his folder with the carefulness of a man not allowed to slam anything. He paused as he passed us. And for a second I saw not the moral accountant of a sterile world, but a doctor who'd once tried to hold grief shut with his hands. "You think noise saves people," he said, almost gently. "I think silence kills them," I said. He nodded, a tiny, tired gesture, and walked out toward compliance. Ruhi sidled up, eyes wide with mischief and something like relief. "Congratulations," she whispered. "You saved people and their stock options. Win-win." "You already said that," I muttered. "Receipts matter," she said, lifting her notebook. "This one's going in the minutes." Daniel exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding breath for hours. The bergamot that clung to him anchored me in a room that had almost spun out of control. "They turned ethics into a product line," he said. "They always were going to," I said. "That's what they know how to sell." I watched Celeste laugh with legal across the room and felt a crawling mix of victory and something like nausea. "We need a move they can't price." Armand approached, soft-footed, like a journalist who knew when not to be a camera. "Off the record?" he said. "Always," I said. "You shifted the frame in there," he said, eyes on me, then on Daniel. "They'll call it leadership. You're going to call it something else." "Consent," Daniel said. "Open doors," I added. Armand's gaze flicked to the projector cooling on its ceiling mount. "Careful," he said, not unkindly. "They'll try to own the hinges." He left with a nod that wasn't quite approval and wasn't quite warning. Mara, meanwhile, was already filing something with a headline sharp enough to cut. The corridor outside was colder. The echo of voices and lemon trailed after us like a cologne we couldn't afford. We walked without speaking until the glass gave way to a quieter stretch of hallway. Just carpet and the distant thrum of ventilation. "Are you okay?" I asked finally. "No." Daniel's honesty surprised me. "But I'm aligned." I huffed a laugh. That's the nerdiest way to say furious and weirdly hopeful I've ever heard. He didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth conceded there might be a future where he did. "They'll build Aurelian plus Antidote into a bundle. It will sell. It will help some people and justify others," I can make the protocol ethical, but I can't stop the market from eating the narrative. Then we starve the market, I said. He looked over, wary, meaning, make the antidote useless to control, I said. Give it away. Publish it open source. Every lab in the country improves it before the board can build a paywall. He stopped walking. The hallway hummed. The lemon finally thinned. He turned fully toward me, and for once didn't reach for a rule. That would be professional suicide, he said. Then we die famous, I said. Or we live clean. He stared at me for a long breath. I hate that you make sense. I hate that you needed me to say it. A beat. He nodded, the tiny, terrifying kind of nod that turns a sentence into a plan. We'll need allies. Ruhi's already HR and the union, I said. We have a nurse who breaks protocol to feed people. We have a journalist who knows the difference between noise and music. I spread my hands. We can build a room with a door and a window, Daniel. His eyes dropped to my hands like he was surprised to find them attached to me. The old impulse flickered, brief and bright. We both felt it. We both let it pass. Ask, he said quietly. Not yet, I said, just as quiet. He exhaled. Understood. We reached the elevator. The doors slid open, reflecting us back in corporate chrome, the man who hated, touch, and the Omega, who wasn't going to let that define either of us. The lemon smell faded as the doors closed. Tomorrow, he said as we descended, hands at his sides like he was refusing to grip anything that wasn't offered. We write a paper that murders 3 careers and saves some lives. Tomorrow, I said. We also buy cookies. He groaned. Ruhi's will kill me. Only if you hurt me, I said, and smiled. I asked. He didn't answer, but that almost smile returned. Like a promise with training wheels. The doors opened. We stepped into a different kind of noise, the ordinary kind, honest and messy. The old system had cracked. The new one would need a blueprint. And somewhere between lemon and bergamot, we'd find a way to make the door stay open. Daniel's apartment smelled like bergamot and printer toner. The scent of decisions. We'd turned the living room into a battlefield. Timelines taped to the windows like translucent. Ribs, tiles of graphs fanned across the table, sticky notes colonizing the fridge door. Outside, the city glittered like it was rooting for us. Inside, the kettle clicked off with the tired dignity of an old soldier. Tea? Daniel asked. Only if it comes with absolution, I said, dropping onto the end of the couch that didn't look like a museum exhibit. Bergamot, he said, as if that answered everything. In his defense, it solved more than it didn't. He set 2 mugs down. The porcelain clinked, a small, honest sound. We were both too tired to pretend we didn't hear our own hearts in it. We can't win this by arguing about efficacy, I said, pulling a scatterplot onto my lap like a blanket. They'll keep moving the goalposts until we're playing on a different field. We move the field, he said. I looked up. He was standing with his hands in his pockets, staring at the wall like it had been untruthful. There was something different in his stance. Less braced, more decided. Like he'd chosen a slope, and now he was standing on it on purpose. Go on, I said. He drew a breath. Aurelian isn't a suppressant, he said, carefully, like he was picking a lock. Not anymore. We position it as a pause. Temporary, reversible, used only with consent, nutrition, and education. No coercion. No deployment without pre-screening and informed choice. I waited. He wasn't done. And the adjunct, what the board wants to sell as the antidote. He met my eyes. We publish it. Publish it, I repeated. As open source, he said. No patents, no price gates. We put the formula in the public domain, with safety notes and manufacturing standards. Universities, clinics, field medics, they can make it, improve it, distribute it without us. I stared at him. He didn't flinch. You realize, I said, That you just proposed stapling a resignation letter to a manifesto and mailing it to legal. His mouth tugged, rueful. Yes. You're going to make it rain lemons, Daniel. An entire citrus festival. If that's the weather, he said. Bring an umbrella. I set the scatterplot aside and leaned forward. Say it again, I asked. The part that gets you fired. We publish the Antidote, he said. Steady. Open source. The room shifted. Not much. Just enough that gravity remembered which way to pull. I blew out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, and felt something complicated and warm expand under my ribs. Okay, I said. Okay, he echoed, a little surprised that I hadn't tried to kill the plan with a joke. Don't worry, I added. I'm still going to make a joke. Of course you are. You're about to be pelted with executive lemons, I said. Wear a helmet. He huffed a laugh that was half human, half exhausted God. The mugs fogged. The city blinked. We were ridiculous and brave, and not nearly as alone as we'd been 24 hours ago. He sat across from me, elbows on knees, fingers interlaced, hands that knew how to hold a scalpel and a policy at the same time. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. For what? My voice softened without asking permission. For building a door and hanging a lock, then calling it compassion, he said. For making a drug do the job of a kinder world. For using control where I should have used care. I stared into my tea, then back at him. Apology accepted, I said. With conditions. He nodded, unsurprised. Name them. We speak the same language from now on, I said, which means yes and no are whole sentences, not experiments. The lab, in the boardroom. Between us. His throat worked. Between us, he repeated. And we changed the sign, I added, tipping my head toward the fridge. The no-touch note watched us like a nervous parent. To what? His voice was lighter. I could hear it trying on hope. Ask first, I said. It's cleaner, and it actually says what we mean. He considered it like a protocol amendment. Agreed. We worked then. The good kind of work, where the sentence keeps finding the next right word. He drafted the new positioning in language so precise it could slice bread. I rewrote the consent model in language that refused to forgive coercion. We added nutrition mandates. We drafted community trainings and peer-led counseling. We wrote the line neither of us had seen on a biotech pitch deck before. No use of Aurelian in environments where consent cannot be freely given. Prisons? I said. Excluded, he said. Schools? Excluded. Military? He didn't answer for a second. Then, excluded. Okay, I said. And under the okay was a litany of other words. Bravo, finally, thank you. It was past midnight when he set his pen down and looked at me across the ruins of our paperwork. He'd shed the jacket, the cuffs were rolled, his hair had lost an argument with his hands. Remy, he said. May I? He stopped, swallowed, the scientist remembering he had a throat. May I hold your hand? The dumbest heat climbed my face. My body remembered the sink and the almost and the crash of instinct. My mind remembered the boardroom and the door without a lock. Something steadied between them, like a bridge deciding it wanted to be built. Yes, I said. My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. And truer. He crossed the no-man's land of the rug and sat beside me, careful as if the couch were a volatile compound. He offered his hand, palm up, not presuming anything. I put mine in it. Nothing detonated. Well, I did, a little, on the inside, but not the kind that makes you run. It was warmth and pulse, and the relief of finding a matching rhythm. His thumb rested along my knuckles like it had been waiting for a job. I felt the minute tremor in him and the answering stillness in me. Hi, I said. Because language is a habit, and I needed to use it on something that wasn't a policy. Hi, he said, and the word sounded almost shy in his mouth. We breathed. The kettle ticked as it cooled. Somewhere outside, a siren climbed and fell, the city's lullaby. When I said I eliminated the variable, he murmured after a minute, I didn't mean I stopped being human. I meant I stopped trusting myself. I know, I said. And I'm not your cure. You're not, he agreed. You're my permission to try again. Correctly. Careful, I said. That almost sounded romantic. It was supposed to sound ethical. Ethical is my love language, I said. Along with cookies. Ruhi's will kill me. Only if you hurt me, I said, smiling into the side of his shoulder. He didn't flinch. He didn't lean in either. He just stayed, patient, precise, like he'd finally learned a control that made room instead of taking it. Sometimes, I said after a while, I'm going to be impatient. I know, he said. Sometimes, I'm going to be afraid. I know. We can meet in the middle, I finished. He squeezed my hand once, a small punctuation mark. Then he released it, deliberately, as if to prove he could. My skin tingled with the ghost of him. My chest felt marginally too big for my ribs. We both pretended to study the nearest chart until our pulses returned to something that wouldn't alarm an Apple Watch. Tomorrow, he said, standing to gather our drafts, I'll call legal and tell them we're publishing the Antidote. If they fire me, you get my teapot. I don't want your teapot, I said. I want your name on a paper that makes someone else's life easier. You can have both. Don't be greedy, I said. And he finally, smiled like it came from a place that wasn't defended. We tidied in the way exhausted people tidy, stacking the mess into taller, neater mess. When he passed the fridge, he paused, plucked the no-touch note down, and set it face first in the trash. From the drawer, he pulled a clean index card and a Sharpie. Write neat, I said. I always do, he said, printing the letters like a vow. Ask first. He taped it up. We stood there, two idiots admiring a piece of paper like it could keep us from breaking. It's a start, I said. It's a standard, he corrected gently. Same thing if we're lucky. We turned off the lights. The city pressed its glittering face to the windows, as if to see what we'd become. In the dark, as we felt our way down the hall, his shoulder brushed mine. The contact was accidental and not. I didn't move away. Good night, Remy, he said. Good night, Daniel. In the bedroom doorway, he paused. Thank you, he added, like a man remembering which word goes with truth. For what? Saying yes when it mattered, he said, and no when it mattered more. Get used to it, I said. I plan to, he answered. The kettle clicked as the last of its heat surrendered. We let the quiet take us. Somewhere past lemon and bergamot, the night smelled like something green. New rules growing. Tomorrow we'd make enemies and maybe a better world. Tonight, we'd made a promise and put it on the fridge. Lab 7C smelled different now. Not sterile, alive. The citrus cleanser still lingered, but someone had added vanilla to the mix, like the building had finally exhaled. Sunlight spilled through the glass walls, glinting off chrome instruments and the new sign above the entrance. Ask first. I paused under it every morning, mostly to remember how far we'd come, and how close we'd come to losing it. Ruhi walked by with a clipboard and a cookie, the twin symbols of her new power. Morning troublemakers, she said. Don't break anything consensually or otherwise. She looked good in authority. Loose blazer, rolled sleeves, a pin that read, Head of People and Ethics. Didn't think HR could have group therapy, I said. It's not HR, she said, deadpan. It's people rehabilitation. We're teaching betas to ask for coffee refills and alphas to apologize for existing. I grinned. Progress. Behind her, Cade passed carrying a tray of coffees. He was slower these days, quieter. The beard had come in patchy, the guilt full. He handed Ruhi a cup, then set another on my desk. Lukewarm, bitter, honest. For the record, he said, I don't hate you. That's a milestone, I said. He nodded. I'm writing a paper about triage. This time, it's about consent, not control. Send me the draft, I said. I will, he said. After Ruhi edits it into something human. She raised her cookie in salute. Teamwork. Down the corridor, the city glittered gold through the window panels, reflected light and new beginnings. Mornings here used to feel like performance reviews. Now they felt like a slow, steady inhale. Minacho waved as she wheeled a nutrition cart past the glass. Protein packs, hydration tabs, smiles. 102S is back to hiking, she said proudly. She sent a photo. I printed it. Daniel, beside me, looked up from the terminal where he was finalizing the new release. Good, he said simply, but his eyes softened in that way they did when language wasn't enough. At noon, the formula for the antidote went live. By 5 p.m., 3 independent labs had forked it. One had improved the dosage stability, and another had renamed it Libra. Someone even annotated the open access document with, "Whoever you are, thank you." We stood together at the window, watching the city catch fire with sunset. My phone buzzed with the board's latest wave of polite fury. Lemons? Daniel asked. Lemons, I confirmed, holding up the message. We expected better alignment. He walked to the fridge, retrieved one of the literal lemons they'd been, mailing him, and stuck it under the magnet labeled, "We tried nice." I laughed. Art, installation, or coping mechanism? Both, he said. Evenings were slower now. Less war, more tea. The living room looked like a place meant for staying, not plotting. The old note, "Ask first," hung above the counter, already smudged from fingerprints and steam. Daniel poured water into 2 cups, as always. The bergamot was stronger tonight, sharp but sweet. Long day? I asked. Long life, he said. We settled on the couch. No distance markers anymore. Just space when we needed it. He rested his mug on the table and turned toward me, deliberate as always. May I ask something? Always, I said. He took a breath that felt like a thesis wrapped in a sigh. Do you still want me to hold your hand? I smiled. Every day. But you'll have to ask each time. He did. May I? You may. Warmth, simple and steady. No detonation, just the sound of 2 mugs cooling, the city humming, and a world not yet perfect but better than it was. I never thought asking could feel like freedom, he said quietly. That's because you used to think silence was control, I said. He nodded, thumb brushing over my knuckles. You were right about the language. It isn't hard. Ask, answer, repeat. See? I said. Simple user interface. Elegant design, he said, smiling. You'd make an excellent project manager. I already manage you, I said. Terrifyingly accurate. We sat in the glow of screensaver light, paperwork forgotten. Outside, the windows reflected the city's pulse and our faint silhouettes, too, figures learning how to stay human in a system built to forget what that meant. He glanced sideways. Remy? Yeah? You remember what you said when we met? I grinned. I brought hands? He looked at our joined ones. Now they have somewhere to be. The kettle clicked again, like a soft applause, and that was the work in the end, building a world that asked before it, took, answered before it assumed, and kept learning how to begin again. Ask, answer. Repeat.